Happy Monday, everyone. Alvin Morton here, Interim Superintendent of Schools, with another episode of Mondays with Morton podcast, where we actually highlight people, things, and places in the city of Chicopee and Chicopee Public Schools to show people how we Chicopee. I'd be remiss if I did not mention that today is Memorial Day, and I want to take a moment just to recognize and salute the many people, the men and women that have given the ultimate sacrifice so that people like myself and others can enjoy the freedoms that we have on today. So I want to say thank you for your service and remember those individuals that have given the ultimate sacrifice on this Memorial Day. So today we have a special podcast where we have students that are coming in today and actually going to talk about their experiences and things in the Chicopee Public Schools. All three are seniors, and we'll start over here. If you can introduce yourself and tell us what school you go to, and we go from there.
Alright, I'm Najha Wilson. I go to Chicopee High School, and I'm a senior this year.
My name is Forson. I also go to Chicopee High, and I'm also a senior.
My name is Jovante Gonzalez, and I go to Chicopee Comprehensive High School, and I'm a senior.
As you see, we have kids from both Chicopee High and Chicopee Comp, so we'll start going right now. So you all wanted to be on the podcast. Some of y'all have been watching the podcast, and I do appreciate the support. It's been a while. We've been up and down with having episodes of the podcast. But as you all being seniors, can you tell us what your plans are? Because graduation is next week.
Yeah.
It's next Thursday for Chicopee High School, the 1st, and it's Friday, June 2nd for Chicopee Comp. So what are your aspirations after graduation?
After graduation, I will be attending UMass Amherst, and I'm going to be majoring in biology. I plan to go to medical school after that and be a dermatologist.
For me, I'll be after graduation, I'll be going to Northeastern, majoring in management information systems, and I'm looking for a career in data, like a data analyst or a consultant.
Right, so after graduation, I'm planning on going to Amherst College to major in biochemistry, to then go on to medical school and specialize in medical genetics and genomics.
Okay, all three of y'all going to some real good schools. I can applaud that and I can appreciate that. Can you talk about your senior year? Can you tell us some things that, well, graduation is next week, so I'm pretty sure y'all all are excited about that. How has your senior year been at Chicopee High School and Chicopee Comprehensive High School? Any highlights, any things you all want to bring up or talk about? Or I can jump right into it. One thing I want to talk about is Chicopee High we talked about it before we got on the air, is yonder bags. So how does Chicopee High feel about yonder bags, and then how's Chicopee Comp? Because y'all came a year later. Y'all were just started this year. Y'all started 2 years ago. So how do you all feel about it? How has it helped, hurt, or what are your feelings about the younger packs to begin with anyway, pouches?
Yeah, so from my experience, I think it's kind of polarizing. I think from the student, it's kind of what you'd expect. All the students kind of overall a lot of them don't really like it, obviously, because it's kind of restricting them, but then the teachers find it, I think, more helpful because it kind of forces people to pay attention more. So it's kind of been like those two viewpoints. I would definitely say there was definitely some outrage about it. Some people definitely try to make plans to try and boycott it and things at the start. But I think by the end of last year and this year as well, people kind of just got used to it and kind of just fit it into routine of daily school life.
How did you personally feel about it?
Me,
So let me go back. So you said two things that really hit me. Comp is at year one, so I'm gonna come to you in a second.
Right.
Year one was for you all, not this year, but last year. So when you first got it, how did you initially feel about it? And then coming into year two, how do you feel about it? Was there any change?
yeah, year one, I would definitely say I was definitely leaning on the side of everyone who kind of was against it. I was pretty against it too, just because for me, I never really felt it was too much of a problem for me. And I do recognize the problem, but I feel like we could have tried other solutions instead. But at the end of the day, it's something that I kind of just adjusted to. I'm not going to be able to, make a policy and get them to revoke it, so I kind of just got to deal with it. And I've still been able to, make memories and things like that, so I've kind of gotten used to things.
How did you feel about it, year one and year two?
Year one, I definitely think there could have been different approaches to it because it was more of an issue for certain students more than others. I just like Joel said, I don't think it really was an issue for me. I know appropriate times when to be on my phone and when to not be on my phone. So yeah, and then like this year, I just don't really think. I honestly think it was kind of ineffective this year.
In what way?
Yeah, like I don't like a lot of people just like would either like break their pouches and like so they can keep them open throughout school, or just not lock them up. But like you get caught with your phone, you're still not supposed to have it, so like you get in trouble. But people still have their phones, so I just don't think that. I don't know, and I think that if they would have approached it differently, I feel like the honor pouches were like a very like aggressive way to go at the phone issue. We could have tried other things. They may not have worked, but I think that other solutions may have been like more fitting before going to the honor pouches.
So hold your thoughts. I'm gonna circle back to that. This is first year for comp. So
Yeah.
what's your feelings about it?
Right, so like overall, I don't think I've heard like one student really like kind of the underpound situation. That's really to be expected. And I think like similarly to Chicopee High School, I feel like a lot of students, they kind of just find like loopholes to get around it. Like they don't really like put their phone in their pouch, or they're not really like, they'll just like cut it or something of that nature. So I feel like the consensus at Chicopee Comp is that like it's like the problem is like a very small group of students, and like the entire school is being punished because of that small group of students. So I know that even some teachers personally that I know don't really like agree with this. They say it's like not really necessary, and like our teachers, they find it to be good. But I feel like those teachers are those teachers that are really like engaging with students that like are like need to have something like this in place. But I feel like for the majority of students, this is not really like something that's needed really at comp.
And how did you personally feel about it for yourself?
Like personally, I don't really use my phone mostly at school, so it wasn't really like a problem for me. But I know like a lot of people, they like to communicate with their friends or use their phones for different purposes, like social media, like during lunchtime. So it kind of seems like unfortunate that they have to be like punished for like the actions of others.
So let me ask this question though. But you all said something in the midst of this conversation piece that you did see the need. There was something when we first came back from remote, because there's a group of kids, or more than a group of kids, that was not responsible with their phones, as you all would say that you are with your own self. So that was and you felt like, the whole school's being punished for it. But hasn't it, I understand and I get all the information, it's cut down on a lot of different things that were transpiring before those phones were in pouches. So you had probably more fights. We still have fights in school, not saying it doesn't happen. You had a whole lot more things that were social. You talk about social media. That the thing, I guess, in my day and my age is the bullying piece for you all is a 24/7 cycle. It can start outside of school, continue on social media, and go from that standpoint. The kids get no break from it. So you see some of the points of what the school was trying to do from their objective of trying to make sure that we're coming back from remote, we're coming out of a pandemic, that they're trying to make sure that kids focus on what the reason for being in school. And I'm not saying I disagree with the fact of saying that the students that were responsible during the break periods, the lunchtime periods where people were using it responsible, but you still have the people that were misusing it. Can y'all not see the need? And somebody brought up the fact of like, we could have tried other alternatives. What are some of the alternatives you think the school could have tried before they went to that? But you are aware though that Central High School has gone to it, Hoyok has gone to it. Now the state, as the Department of Education, is now looking at it and seeing if there's a need throughout the, across the state for kids to get more focused on it. So how do y'all feel about some of the things I'm saying now? I get your perspective and of it. You're about to leave, and you're going in the workplace. People are not going to be able to pull out your phone 24/7 at the workplace. At certain times you can pull it out, and certain times you should not pull it out. But I think you all are aware of that because all you said you're kind of responsible with that particular situation. Do y'all not feel like that part of the situation was trying to prepare some kids for the real world in the workplace?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think in that regard, I think it does. I understand the point of that, but one difference is that like it doesn't really force you to have your own type of self-control, because at least for me, in my part-time jobs where it is working with other adults and it's like a real job, they don't have a yonder pouch. Everyone there is you're kind of supposed to be aware of like how obviously you're in the middle of, because I'm a cashier, in the middle of an order, you can't take out your phone and text somebody back. You gotta get your work done while you're doing it. And I think that, in my opinion, where you kind of force everyone to put their phone away, it kind of doesn't give the opportunity for students to actually learn when it's appropriate to have their phone out and when not to, because you don't have that option. The phone is just away at all times. And I think for me, in some instances, it's kind of been a little less convenient because like for example, I had an internship, and so one of the things was running like a social media page, and so there'd be a lot of times where during school hours I want to be able to, but because on Chromebooks and all those, obviously because you don't want someone to, just because you put the phone away, you can go on a Chromebook and you have the internet. So those websites are blocked, so I'm not able to post anything on there. I also can't post on my phone, so it kind of makes things a little more inconvenient in terms of getting other types of work done. So in that case, that's why I feel like another alternative was my teacher, my Spanish teacher. She would have us put our phones in those the pouches in the front of the room during tests or during class, and then she'd give us, a couple minutes at the end of class to just do whatever on our phones. And it worked really effective, but I guess part of it was also that like she had the respect of her students, so it was able to work out really well. And I think the problem is that in some classes, the teacher might not have that same level of being able to get everyone to agree to that, in which case I do understand like the point of the pouch.
So just to go along with that particular piece, so there's been instances like right now you're not supposed to text and drive.
Yeah.
So the state's going to step in, but people still text and drive, and you still have accidents. And you can all think of instances where you've been inconvenient. Like I'll give an instance if you're at the gym, somebody's sitting there taking selfies in front of the mirror or on the exercise machine talking on the phone. Doesn't that bother you from that perspective? Not everybody learns a certain way of when it's appropriate and appropriate not to use their cell phones. And I understand, like you said, that whole concept, if you all don't know the history of it, the Yonder pouches came from Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, and all them at their concerts where people were putting them in pouches, so therefore they couldn't bootleg their actual concerts and stuff. So they took it to another level so where kids can make sure that, trying to make them responsible and focus more on. There may come a point in time, which I'm hoping it may be, as you all said, that kids can learn, or people can learn, period, when it's the right time to use their cell phones or not, and we can maybe move away from Yonder pouches. I don't think this is something to hear that's going to be forever for the next generations to come along. I think the real reason behind it was everybody was dysregulated coming back from remote learning and COVID, and this is the one of them to focus on learning. And speaking of that, so I'll transition into the next topic. How was that perspective of doing remote learning or the pandemic? What type of effect has it had on you and your friends from an educational standpoint and from a social standpoint? How did that affect you all?
Well, I guess it kind of like depends on like who you're talking to, I guess, because I know it was like difficult for some people. They found it difficult to adapt to that, but personally for me, I found it to be relatively simple, the process. I feel like I was like given the resources necessary to be able to do well, like with remote learning, and I feel like all the information I needed was provided to me. But I know a lot of people, they do better like with like in-person learning, so I feel like that was a major challenge for them. But overall, like personally for me, it was like just a smooth process throughout.
How do you think it socially for you? Let's pick the education. How was it for you socially?
I mean, like socially, that was definitely like a challenge. Like I can't really like do anything like when school basically because I'm like remote. But I feel like when I went back, those social connections I had before were still there. They were still intact. So I was like fortunate in regard to that.
And for you?
Yeah, for me, I remember. I would say like at the start. I remember it started off strong, like not the freshman year part, that was a blur, it was years ago, but at least sophomore year when we were coming
blur for you already? Okay.
Yeah.
Wait till you get a little bit older, it's gonna be more than a blur, but go ahead.
The sophomore year part, I remember when we were first starting off remote, I was real ready for it. I was ready to take on the challenge. I would get myself all ready early in the morning, get my notebook, go to my living room, and be laser focused. But a month into things, at least for me, at least with the way I learned, like I started falling apart. I was like, 7:41 would start, and that's when I would wake up for class. I'm starting class and I'm still in my bed, because I just couldn't, staring at the screen. It was hurting my eyes. It was getting difficult. So I remember, the second hybrid started, I immediately had to, get myself back in there because some classes, I was falling asleep for. I won't lie about that, but. Once I was able to actually, get back in there, I was able to actually, like, retain a lot more information. And socially, like, luckily for me, I already had, going into that year, I already had a solid group of friends. So we were able to, keep in contact, play video games and stuff like that. So that was fun. But I did notice, the second I went back hybrid, I immediately was able to make more friends because it's a lot harder to talk to new people when no one was really, you don't even know what anyone else looks like. But, as soon as I got into hybrid, I met new people, some friends who, to this day, some of my closest friends. So that was a big difference.
And for you?
I honestly preferred remote learning. I enjoyed like learning online. I like being at home and like learning because I'm like it's my most comfortable environment. And I like really prospered. Like I did really good in school, and I stayed remote the entire year, so it was really nice for me. Socially, it was kind of hard to like maintain friendships, relationships, just because like pretty much everything had to be done over like technology, like texting, calling, FaceTime. And you get tired of that. Like, well, at least I get tired of that. Like, it's not really my thing. I prefer like face-to-face interaction. So it was really hard to maintain like most of my like friendships. When I got back to school, like it got a little bit better. But yeah, I like having friends, like it was really just difficult. And then like also with COVID, like hanging out with people, it was hard to do that because like you know you don't want to get COVID or you don't know who everybody else has been around. So that's why.
So continue with that particular topic. What did you miss the most during COVID or the pandemic, the shutdown, and remote learning? What did you miss the most? What do you feel like you missed during that time period? Because we're almost talking, so we shut down March 13th, Friday the 13th, 2020. I can remember like it was the other day. I'm like, whoa, this is different. And then it kept going on, it got longer and longer, and it was throughout the summer, and then we came back in hybrid in the fall. So it wasn't the same even in social aspects and going out and doing things you want. What do you feel like you missed the most? But one thing I will say though, at least for me, it slowed things down for people because using the everyday life, like we're back to some form of normalcy pretty much, that you got to hustle and bustle, you got a routine, you don't really watch that much, I don't watch much TV during the week because I don't get to, you usually watch on the weekends, or now people are streaming and doing everything else, whatever, but people sat down and watched TV and got to see a lot of different things. I think that's where the whole social justice movement came from, because people got to see what was going on in the world and really slow down and see some of those episodes. But I guess the thing for you though, individually, what do you feel like that you missed out on the most, or what did you miss the most during the shutdown and the remote learning? I think you were saying socially from that perspective, but anything else in particular that you feel like you missed out on?
I think I really did miss out on my whole entire like high school experience, like because I didn't get to finish my freshman year. I feel like it's crucial to be able to finish your freshman year. Like that's like where it all started. It's like a pivotal moment. So I didn't get to finish that. My sophomore year was completely remote. Junior year, you know, we eased back in, but like the same like Chicopee High traditions that we had weren't like carried out. Like the only time we've had a normal like Pride Week was like my freshman year. That's the last time we did it. So in the senior year, we're back to normal. It's just wasn't. It's not the same as it was like my freshman year prior to COVID. I got to like really experience Chicopee High, how it was prior to any type of pandemic. So I just feel like that completely altered like my perspective of high school and my high school experience. It wasn't normal whatsoever. But no one else's was either, but I just feel like it really, really hit the class of 2023 bad. Like.
And you?
Yeah, what I would say I missed most was being able to really do anything, because for me, once I was able to get back into things, I'm not really in my house, like, or my room especially. My room is kind of just like to stop in there for a little break or sleep, but during those COVID years I was in there all the time. I would just be coming out to eat and like playing sports, going out, doing things. I really missed just the opportunity to do any of that those years. It was, I was getting sick of, like just being in the house, seeing like the same four corners of my house, and, even, my parents starting to annoy me a little bit because, my mom was always home yelling in the background, gotta, turn my volume down during the class when I'm trying to talk, things like that. But I would say, like, I'm glad things are kind of easing back into things now, being able to do things again, just in general.
And you?
Right, so like as like a Chicopee Comm student, I'm in their like career technical and education program, right, for information support services and networking. And that class, since like a vocational shop, like there's a lot of hands-on work, and like you can't really do that when you're remote, right? Like you can't learn how to build a computer when you don't have like a computer to build in the first place. So I feel like from that point I kind of like missed out on a lot of those different projects we could have done, like hands-on, like computer networking, like trying to build computers and build networks, and you can only do like simulations online basically, which is like not really like ideal. But I think once I returned, Mr. Wozniak and Mr. Mertz were really able to provide us what we missed during that time and put us in a good position for like senior year now. So I am very much appreciative of that.
All right, and then the next topic I'll bring up is mental health. And we started the SEL program, social emotional learning program, Trails to Wellness, was y'all the first class to roll that out with. But what are your thoughts about mental health and mental health awareness and social emotional learning? What are your thoughts as students? We talk about it a lot as adults, and even adults struggle with it, and even adults have a hard time talking about it and addressing it. But I want to hear from a student perspective, because we put it out there and talk about social emotional learning. We put in a curriculum in place for students and see what the benefits are to help kids. I firmly believe, and this is a generation below, I think kids need to develop better coping skills. That is one of the things I believe, because one of the things I do believe about remote, people were all for routine. Routine is good for a lot of different people. I know I'm a creature of habit myself. So routine is good, but sometimes you get into bad habits. And I think a lot of bad habits were evolved doing remote learning. One of those being, and we're talking about mental health, but one of those things is vaping. A lot of kids vape. They were vaping because they were self-medicating because they have mental health issues or social emotional learning issues. So that's one of the things I think became a huge push. Vaping was happening before we went to remote, but it really blew up on the scene, so to speak, during COVID, because people could do when they wanted to. When you come back to school, it's like, okay, then I'm in school in the building. I used to vape at 8 o'clock every day. Then what do I do when I'm in the school building? Then run to the bathroom, try to vape, and you got these 2 or 3 hit vapes you can flush down the toilet. People, y'all are some of the most creative and innovative people I know. So kids find ways to get around things, like you're talking about the internet when you go into Chromebooks. Y'all find ways to get around our proxies and everything else, using proxies to get around our things. Y'all are creative. I just wish it was used in a more productive way sometimes. But my point and my initial thing was mental health. Your thoughts on mental health, awareness and mental health, and then how do you all feel about it? And then do you know anybody that suffers from any type of mental health or any type of social emotional learning deficits or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say for me, it's definitely something that I've grown to understand a little more now, and I think it's definitely something critical to address. I think the problem is just that there hasn't really been the right way to do that, because I would say, there's been kind of methods, with the SEL things, but even with that, to be completely honest, it wasn't even really something that was taken too serious when it was done, like in my class, when we did it, and my friends, their classes, like, it's not something that people were really probably paying as much attention to as they probably should have. And I'll even admit, I wasn't even myself, maybe I should have, looked into it a little more, because I think mental health is definitely, it's an underrated issue, and I think.
Why do you think that people didn't take it as serious as, because you hear it on TV, you hear people talking about it, you hear about it in the news, you hear people, and I think most people won't talk about it because it's still sort of taboo. People feel like they're going to be judged if they say they have some mental health issues. But why do you think students that are experiencing are scared to even take it serious? Were they scared they're going to find something else about themselves that they didn't really want to know or want to address? Why did you think they didn't take it so serious?
Yeah, I think part of it is just, as you said, like the stigma behind it. I think people kind of just, it's just a difficult topic to bring up. Kind of, the room gets a little quieter. It's a little more of a serious topic compared to like getting a physical injury. When you're talking about like, I'm not happy with myself, or I want to hurt myself. It's just a harder conversation to have, and not everyone's always prepared to like bring it up to someone. Like, you have to really be able to find the right person to, you injure your elbow or something, you go to the trainer or you go to the doctor, and they can clearly see what happened. But for an issue where it's like something within yourself, you really got to be able to talk to the right person, and sometimes it's difficult to do in school.
And you didn't think it was anybody in school that you could trust, or you think, well, I'm not saying you personally, I'm saying the students feel like there's nobody in school, because we have social workers, we have school counselors, we have behaviorists, you have a whole bunch of adults in the building. You don't think kids feel comfortable going to somebody that's trusted adults to have those conversations, or much less not even going to their parents to talk about those issues?
I would say in terms of trusted adults, I personally trust a lot of the adults in the building, but for an issue like that, you really kind of, I feel like, to me, you have to be able to have that kind of connection. And even though all the staff may be willing to help, you really have to be able to, you know, almost have more of a, like a friendship, you know, a deeper connection with the student for them to be comfortable telling you those kind of issues. And in terms of with parents, I think it could arguably be even worse, you know, like in a lot of instances, you know, the parents also just as much it might not be a conversation that the student feels comfortable talking to their parents about because they might not understand it, you know, culturally or just because it's not really something that you just bring up as often as other types of health issues, in my opinion.
Any thoughts? Mental health, trusted adults, why kids didn't take it so seriously, where you try to put a tool out there that people can try to, you know, open. I think mainly the tool is about just opening discussion and conversation, so people can feel comfortable. I mean, there's a whole bunch of topics that you try to have that discussion about, to open the communication about that people don't want to talk about. And I think that's what that tool was for, to try to ease that stigma, and try to ease that taboo. Why do you think people don't still want to talk about it, or kids didn't take it that serious when that was rolled out?
Specifically for the SEL and in school, I think people don't really I think specifically a lot of seniors didn't take it seriously because I just feel like we've been through so many years of high school and in school in general. We we are pretty much who we are. We feel how we feel, so I just feel like a lot of people just were like, this won't help me. You know what I mean? Like one period every other week talking about my family is not really going to help me in any way. I just think that was just people's perspective on it. So that's why I think they didn't take it seriously. I don't really know much about freshmen, sophomores, younger students, but I just feel like it's less effective on people that are as old as we are, especially when this wasn't in place for years before that. This was our first year, you know? So.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I also agree with the fact that this new curriculum about mental health has not really been received well by the seniors. I don't think really any of the seniors take it seriously or find it to be useful, because at this point I believe that most seniors understand themselves and mental health and things of that nature, and if they are having problems regarding that, I think that most people, they usually have a guidance counselor, a teacher they can go to. But personally for me, I don't really have many mental issues that I find myself to be in, fortunately, but I know that if I did find myself in a situation like that, I could, there's many teachers I can go to, or guidance counselor or something of that nature. But I find that really the comp community is very supportive of that, and really try to push mental health agendas.
So speaking of that, so I'll dovetail off of that. So mental health, let's talk about one of the things I did bring up is coping skills. So I bring that up is because I do think a lot of younger adults, because y'all will soon be adults, come graduation next week, ain't your mom and dad waking you up no more. You have to get up and do what you got to do, especially when you go to college. You got to get up on your own. The professors don't care if you come. If you don't come to class, he's still getting paid regardless. So this is a whole different type of ball game. So that's going to be on your onus and the habits. And I think high school and everything prepares you for what's next. So those habits got to be in place. So when I talk about coping skills, and one of the things I did bring up is vaping, or let's even talk about, go farther than that, drug use or substance abuse. A lot of kids use that for the purposes of trying to self-medicate because of maybe mental health issues or other issues, or maybe because it's depressed or whatever it may be. How do we address that particular piece? Because there's different methods of coping with different problems and issues, whatever is positive and negative or whatever it may be, but that's going to lead you down a rabbit hole to somewhere else with those negative coping skills. And I'm not saying every kid in the district has those type of coping skills, but some people do have those, because we do know, and you all are in the high schools, you all seniors, you know what goes on in the school. There are some substances in the building, kids are using substances, things are coming on, people are experimenting. So how do we address those type of things? How do we make sure that we help these younger generation behind you, whether it's 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, will be seniors, to help them develop positive coping skills, because life is going to get tough. There's going to be a point in time where you're going to test your mettle and you got to figure out, okay, what do I do next? How do I navigate this? What do I do? What do you turn to? If you don't have those friends, don't have those coping skills, you don't feel like you can talk to your parents about it, what do kids do? What do you think you all have in your bag of trips personally, or some of your friends that you all, when times get tough, for exam time come, college comes, it's going to come, how are you going to cope with some of those things?
For me, it's just getting into my hobbies. So, sports, gonna play basketball or whatever. if I got time, or making music. Those are some examples of how, like, if I had a stressful day, it's something I could look forward to and just relax, or hanging out with friends. Another thing with mine too is just kind of being able to relax and take my mind off of that thing, and those are probably some ways I have coping wise.
What about you?
For me, if I'm like feeling stressed or like down, I listen to music a lot of the time. I also love movies, and I have a lot of comfort movies, so I often watch like movies that like I've seen a million times that just feel comfortable to me. But that's pretty much what I do.
Do you feel like, so I'm a movie buff too, the only reason I'm stopping there real quick is when you rewatch those movies, do you see something before, every time you watch it, you pick up on something like, I never saw that
Absolutely,
before? You realize,
yes.
okay, all right, I thought I was the only person that did that. So what about
Right,
you?
like me, I kind of enjoy like writing or reading a lot. Basically, I just find that maybe like reading a book just allows me to just put myself in a different place from a different perspective, and just change the environment that I'm in. And like writing just allows me to express myself in like a different way, other than maybe more like violent tendencies or things of that nature.
Okay. So let me ask this question: have all y'all matriculated all the way through Chicopee Public Schools? So what grade did you start in Chicopee Public Schools at?
4th grade.
4th grade.
Starting kindergarten.
Starting 6th grade.
Okay, so can you tell me about your experience in Chicopee Public Schools? Your whole experience from the time period, you said you started in 4th grade?
Yep.
So and you started at what elementary school?
Litwin.
Litwin Elementary, and then you went where?
DuPont.
And then you're at Chicopee High School.
Yep.
So can you kind of describe what your educational experience and your overall experience has been in the Chicopee Public Schools?
So I'm kind of like a military brat. I moved a lot before I came here, so I've experienced a lot of different educational systems. Chicopee, I like their education. Like I feel like I have learned a lot throughout my whole educational career since I've been here. Litwin was a really good elementary school. DuPont I had a really good experience there. Chicopee High,
Besides COVID.
Yeah,
okay.
it was like good for me. I do think that we could use more diversity within staff.
That will be a next topic, but I'm going to ask you about that. Yes,
Okay.
I was going to bring it up, but I'm trying to get your experience first, which that plays into your experience about the diversity of staff.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I just wish I would have seen more like people of color, just like people that looked like me, that were in like the places of power, teachers, vice principals, principals. I just wish I would have seen more of that throughout my whole Chicopee public schools career.
So let me ask you the question, since you brought that topic up, and I will ask individually both of you all too, when I ask you about your experience. So when we talk about diversity comes in many different forms. It could come in gender-wise, it can come in thought-wise, it can come in race and ethnicity-wise. So I guess the question is, and we've been working on Chicopee, we call it DBEI, diversity, belonging, equity, and inclusion. So we've been looking at that particular piece. But what does it do for you on a level to see people that maybe your teachers, maybe your people, vice principals, or even higher up, somebody that looks like you, what does that do for you? Because when we talk about diversity, I always want to hear from a kid's perspective, and talk about diversifying the staff. What does that do for you to see somebody that looks like you in front of the classroom or in your building that's working in the building? What does that do for you individually?
It inspires you, because like if you see people that like look like you, same race as you, even if they're not the same race, just people of color, like it just shows you that like we can accomplish just as much as anybody who's like not a person of color is. And also like because they're a person of color, like our experiences are just different from people that are not people of color. So there's more opportunity to relate to people. Because like my experiences with black women are never just going to be the same as the experiences of a white woman. Like it's just never going to be my reality. So to see like black women or even black men in places of power, like it's like inspiring.
In your experience, since you said kindergarten for you,
Yeah.
so what has your experience been in Chicopee Public Schools? And then at the end, tell me about the diversity piece.
Yeah, so for me, obviously, I don't have too much to base it off of because I've been here basically since the start. But overall, I would say I definitely enjoyed my experience.
Where did you go to elementary school?
For me, I went to Belcher, and then I was stopped in 2nd grade, so I went to Litwin for the rest of elementary, then went to DuPont, then to Chicopee High.
Okay.
And overall, I would definitely say staff are very talented, definitely. But I would definitely say absolutely. Looking back, I don't even. It's probably on a single hand or two hands the amount of teachers who have in the same race as me. And, I think it is one hand really, and it is kind of just something when you look back at it, it's interesting because in photos and things any award or something I get it's always something my parents would bring up they'd say you're the only black person in that photo and things like that, and it's kind of a little more isolating when that's something that you kind of realize you're the only one there doing that, but when you're able to see someone else who looks like you, definitely kind of gives you more encouragement, to be able to, push yourself harder to do something. Yeah.
In your experience,
Yeah.
was 6th grade for you, correct?
Yeah, 6th grade. So I went to Bellamy Middle School, and then went to Chicopee Comp, right? I think regarding diversity, I feel like when I see another person of Hispanic culture, I really develop an immediate connection with them, even if I don't really know them. I feel like there's immediate understanding from a cultural perspective. But I feel regarding diversity, I would like to see more maybe Hispanics in different fields, because anytime you see a Spanish person, they're always teaching a Spanish class, and I feel it'd be nice to see them maybe in somewhere else, maybe mathematics or English or something of that nature. So
I laugh because it's not funny, but I just find it to
Yeah.
be funny, kind of stereotypical, because in saying because they speak Spanish. But I don't know if that's always the case. But I understand where you're coming from. Go ahead.
So regarding that, it'd be nice to see maybe what the Hispanic teacher can teach us, maybe in different fields other than maybe a Spanish class.
In your experience in 6th grade, what would you say overall experience?
I mean, regarding my experience, I feel it was kind of difficult for me because I was homeschooled before that. My entire elementary time was homeschooled. So that was when going to 6th grade, that was the first time for me really entering public schools.
And how was that from going from homeschool to really be thrown into the midst of probably your toughest years as middle school?
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. I kind of just try to stay focused on my work, try to develop connections with others, and although the first year it was definitely difficult, I feel the teachers really tried to support me along the process, and it just, by my 8th grade year, I was doing well and ready for high school, so I'm very grateful for that.
So to go back to the diversity piece for me, so I give a little bit of history because I try not to divulge too much information about myself, but I grew up in the state of West Virginia. So if you've ever been to West Virginia, it's only 4% black in the whole state. So for me, I was the black kid and only in the class for a lot of the time period. And what that did for me, and I'm not saying this is everybody, but it motivated me to do well academically because I didn't want to be labeled as the dumb black kid in the classroom. So most people didn't know how I did academically. I kept it kind of under the scenes, but that was the motivation. And I will admit what you all saying, that when I had a teacher that looked like me or had some similarities to me and had the same experience, because a lot of my teachers were my parents' classmates, because my parents went through all segregated schools their whole life. So, and then my siblings and I went to integrated schools, so when I had their classmates, I think that I worked harder than I ever worked before in any of those classes. Probably because of my parents knew them, and the other piece for me is no matter what anybody could do to me at school, I was more afraid of disappointing my parents or getting in trouble and coming home and try to explain to them. So that's how I was raised from that perspective. But I understand the diversity piece because for me, from elementary to middle school to high school to undergrad to grad school and to law school, I maybe can count on both hands of the teachers that had to look like me. But I had a different motivation too, with sometimes being that only person of color in class that motivated me to say, okay, I have to push myself to the next level to do whatever. So I do get that. We are working on that in Chicopee to try to find ways of attracting more diverse talent within the Chicopee Public Schools. We're having job fairs. We're actually doing every Wednesday you see across the ticker, there's a Chicopee Public Schools ticker for hiring. We have a commercial we're doing. And we're also trying to reach out to HBCUs, historically black colleges, universities, to see if we can recruit some talent too. But most people's like, okay, where's Chicopee, Mass?
Mm-hmm.
Only reason I know where Chicopee is in Massachusetts is because I came up here for law school. I would not have known where Chicopee was if that was not the case. I went to Western New England College, Yale University for law school. So it just depends. So we're trying different ways to do that. If we can come up with different tools, if you all ever have suggestions and want to come back to Chicopee or even give ideas of how we can attract diverse pools, because our demographics say otherwise. our demographics right now say we're 53% students of color and 47% Caucasian students and white students. So, I mean, you know, so that's saying a whole lot that we, you know, I hate the term, but we're a minority majority district from that perspective. But when you look at our teaching for staff thing, it's the total opposite. So how do we get more of comprehensive from that particular piece? How do we recruit more? Because most people, even when I'm in the barbershop or somewhere talking, they're like, "You work in Chicopee?" It's like they're shocked. There's people of color in Chicopee. They're shocked to hear that particular piece. And I don't know why that is, and I don't know if your friends talk that same way when you see them, like, "Oh, Chicopee, really?" It's just, I don't know if at some point in time they say Springfield they would think more, Holyoke they would think more, but Chicopee is always like, "Whoa, I didn't know there was that many people of color or was that diverse over there." So I don't, is that a topic of conversation with your friends, or even when you go outside of the city, do people feel the same way about Chicopee and saying that, "Oh, we didn't know that, you know, there was a large group or a good group or size of people of color in Chicopee"? Y'all hear those same type of comments and things like that?
Yeah, I would say one thing. Speaking of that, I remember. I definitely used to hear when I was younger that this was more like white, more Polish specific. Like Polish was a heavy ethnicity, here. But I would say I think overall, you know, I haven't looked at the statistics for it, but just from what I've noticed, I just noticed that I feel like compared to when I first started here, you know, what, however long ago kindergarten was, compared to now, I think I've just noticed more, you know, people of color and people who look like me in the classroom. So I think maybe it's just that historically, I think Chicopee has, you know, ethnicity-wise has changed over time compared to maybe Springfield or Holyoke, which might have had a stronger minority background from a while ago. So I think over time, maybe Chicopee's, how people view Chicopee will probably change as people realize, you know, as you said, over 50%.
Yeah, it's 53%.
53%. Yeah, once people actually realize that. Then
That's the schools themselves. The city is a whole different.
City's
There's
different
different type of demographics.
Yeah.
When you look at the city demographics versus the school demographics, they're definitely different. But the schools themselves, yes, are more diverse.
Yeah.
Your experience too. I mean, do people have that same thought process when you talk to people outside of the city of Chicopee? Like, "Yo, you live in Chicopee?" I just said, "Yo, I'm sorry. Did you live in? You know, they say that you actually live in the city of Chicopee. Are they shocked?"
Yeah, like
Okay.
it's, you know, it's kind of not expected that like a lot of Black people, or people of color, honestly, at all, go to Chicopee High. And honestly, like when you are in Chicopee High, you look like at the classes and you like look back like farther and farther. It's less diversity and less diversity and less diversity. So I just think as of recently, it's been like more prevalent. Like that more people of color have gone to the school, which is like it's understandable. That's why people are like shocked at how many Black people or people of color go to the school, because it always hasn't been like this.
Well, but even though because we changed the how we actually did the middle schools when we did the actual redistricting, even DuPont has demographically changed over the last 5 to 8 years compared to Bellamy, because Bellamy used to be the more diverse school, but DuPont and Bellamy are similar as we speak right now. So that's a different thing. In your thought process, when you have conversations with people outside of Chicopee, are they surprised that you live in Chicopee?
I mean, like, right now I'm not really, like, living in Chicopee. I'm, like, living just in Springfield, just, like, outside the borders of Chicopee. But, like, when I was living in Chicopee, I feel like, I think the main consensus is that they don't really, like, talk about, like, any, like, minority groups maybe, like, in Chicopee. I feel like that's not really something that's really, like, promoted at all. Like, I've not really heard of that, like, before. But, so it's just not really, like, something that comes up in conversation, I've noticed.
So, if there's anything, so you all have different experiences, 6th grade, 4th grade, kindergarten. What would you say to if you were coming through school now, yourself now, what would you say to yourself? What would you have done differently? What could you have done differently? Would you have participated in anything differently? Or what type of advice would you give to the kids that are coming behind you, whether they're going to Chicopee Con, whether they're going to Chicopee High School, or whether they're going to DuPont or going to Bellamy? What type of advice would you, provide to them? Because on graduation, I'll try to give y'all some type of advice to lead, what's the next step in life. You as your peers that are behind you, this is the opportunity to say, what would you tell them about your experience, or what could you have done differently, and what you have participated in now that you think about it? Because you got time to reflect back on the 13 years of school, that, especially from kindergarten. What would you tell anybody, or what would you have said to yourself if you were starting now, that what you know now, you had this knowledge now, and you going back to when you first started, what would you say to yourself, or what would you pass on to the generations or the students behind you?
I feel like personally, like I know from my experience, like if you start something, you should probably like finish it. Like just if you're gonna do something, be committed to it like the entire time. Because I find that if you're like in a club or like a sport, right, and you like start and things start to get difficult, and you decide maybe like to stop, you're not really gonna get much from it. But if you like stick with it and try to go with challenges, then you're gonna get much more out of it. Really, that's what I've like noticed in my time.
I would say definitely be aware of how much you can handle. Not overwhelming yourself with things, and kind of quality over quantity. Being able to do something and do it well is better than being, kind of doing a lot of things and being so at it. So just being able to, kind of find your niche and being able to build up on it and develop it would be what I would tell myself.
I tell myself to be more open to like different school activities, because I just feel like sometimes you'll hear about an activity and just offer it like, not interesting, I don't want to do it. And I would just tell myself to like, maybe try more, because I participated in the school community like very actively throughout my years in high school that I could. But I just feel like I would have did more, especially like when it came to sports. I think I would have like dedicated my time to sports more, because like honestly looking back on it, I wish I would have been more into it, because I did track freshman and sophomore year, and I wish I really just would have been dedicated to it, because I wasn't dedicated to it, and just did it all throughout high school, because I feel like it's nice to have like something that you were passionate about all throughout high school.
So, this is a question I will ask, maybe it's a dangerous question, but I will ask it anyway. If you had the opportunity to change something about your experience, or even, I'll speak right now because y'all are Chicopee Comp or Chicopee High, about your Chicopee Public Schools or Chicopee High, Chicopee Comp experience. Well, what would you suggest as a change that you would like to see? Or changes. I want to leave it to one, but changes you'd like to see for the future, the kids that are coming through, that something that we as in positions of power that may be able to change and make the experience and make the opportunities, more available for more kids and more students. What would you like to see change? Or add it? Maybe not even a change, but just add it.
Like personally, I feel like just an increase in diversity would just be like very good. That's like the main thing that I find would be most likely beneficial.
Yeah. For me, I would say being able to expand your circle, and I think one thing I noticed is definitely like, it's not immediate. Sometimes you kind of forget, but definitely there's a lot of cliques within the school. I remember, one time, planning something with someone, and they mentioned I was one of the AP kids, and realizing what that means in terms of when I look at, a time where all the classes put together, and, half of the people there I've never seen before, but we've been going to the same school system for how many years, just because, starting from, at least definitely freshman year and things, when you start getting put into honors classes and things, you start seeing the same groups of people all the time. Even further back when they would have those, gifted reading, whatever courses, you're seeing those same people from the start. And so just one thing that does help is, playing sports and doing other club activities where you're kind of able to interact with other groups of people, but definitely trying to break out of those social circles and being able to get to know like your other classmates.
So how do we as a district, or how do we as a school help, as you would say, and I'm gonna use your word that you just used, how do we diversify, as you call it, your clique or your circle? How do I diversify? How do we help kids do that? How do we provide more opportunities, experiences for, as you say, the AP kids and other kids to, even the Best Buddies to me is one of the best programs, because you get to interact with your peers, peers that may not, think the same way you do or not learn the same way you do, but yet and still they are your peers, and socially they can learn a lot from you and you can learn a lot from them. That to me is a great program that actually promotes that whole diversification of your circle or your clique, as you would call it. How do we as a district or school help promote kids to do that?
I would say I don't have the exact way to promote, but at least I think one way actually would be, with things like Pride Week and things like that. At least for me, one thing I feel like in Pride Week was I was definitely able, when you're put with the other classmates and, you all have that common goal of trying to beat the other classes, that's an opportunity to kind of interact with people outside of your group, getting people to play more sports and things where it doesn't have to do with academics, because I think that's one of the biggest things that splits people off is just what kind of classes you take, which forces you to see the same people. So more, classes, art, music, those kind of classes where everyone kind of just gets thrown in, it's all mixed together, and you have the chance to make friends with people who you wouldn't have talked to otherwise.
Your thoughts?
I just think encouraging like more vigorous courses among the whole student body would be very beneficial. Throughout my whole high school career, I've taken AP honors, like that's all I've taken for my courses. And like Joel said, I've had classes with the same people since freshman year. And I just feel like offering like those AP classes and those honors classes to like students that usually are like in CV classes and just don't take those courses, that would be very beneficial, especially to like diversifying cliques.
So one of the things I'm gonna ask a couple more and then I'm gonna wrap it up. You brought up athletics. So one of the things I meet with Mr. Mackin on a regular basis, and maybe I'll get him on one of the podcasts before I close this down for the year. But participation in athletics has gone down. And I don't know if participation in clubs has gone down also too. It seemed like after remote we came back from remote learning, it seems like people like, I don't know if I want to participate in things anymore. I feel like people would be running to it to more socialize. But one of my theories, you can squash my theory, is a lot of jobs that people that were not taking, young adults, young kids were able to get those jobs. So once you start making that money, you're not worried about athletics or anything like that. You're always shaking your head when I say the participation is down. How do we reinvigorate, or how do we re-stimulate participation in athletics again? Or even clubs, even more interest in your school, taking more participation in your school, becoming more of a citizen of Chicopee Comp or a citizen of Chicopee High School. How do we invigorate? How do we get kids to be more involved in their school, to have that pride, Chicopee Comp pride, that Chicopee High School pride? How do we reinvigorate students to do that? Because I feel like it's not the same.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right about that, because as you said, once you start getting paycheck, it definitely changes things, especially because, at least for me, it's hard to try and do both, because you'd have to go to school, you go to your club or whatever, and then you have to go to work some days, and you spend the whole day and you're not even in your house. So I think
we're not gonna have NIL for high school sports.
Yeah,
name,
exactly.
image, or likeness to be paying kids for high school sports or clubs. That's not gonna happen. But I just don't know how do we reinvigorate it, because sports. The two things I think, and you all talk about, the underlying thing is, if you want diversity or people that normally do not communicate or get together with each other on a regular basis, there's two things I think in life where they actually get together on a regular basis. One is sports teams, because teams you would never have talked to kids you play on sports teams, never even had a conversation with in the military. Those are the two things I think where people of different groups and backgrounds come together for a common goal and purpose, and regardless of what they look like, whatever their thought process, their opinions may be, you're working for a common goal and purpose. How do we stimulate or inject that into our schools and get that community? How do we get that sense of community, that sense of pride in our particular schools? How do we do that?
I feel like maybe like more promotion, trying to use social media more or things of that nature. I feel like if you try to really promote it more, it becomes more of the school culture, and by promoting more, it becomes more popular among the students, so that could possibly increase participation in clubs and sports and have people maybe more motivated to participate in those.
Any thoughts on this side?
I really don't know how to get the student body more engaged with activities. I was the NHS president for this year, and we try to get participation up for this trivia night that we had, and people just are not into it. And I don't know what the solution really would be. After COVID, it just literally was never the same, and I think the issue is bigger than me. I have no idea what the student body is looking for.
I will say, I think maybe it's just about finding the right thing that people are interested in, because I will say, in my experience, because in NHS I had a committee I led, and we did host a movie night, and we were kind of expecting it to kind of just be this thing that would flop, and It would just, be me and the other committee members. We would be there, maybe a couple kids would show up. But we had, I think, over 50 kids who ended up going, and it was all underclassmen who I think just wanted the opportunity. Yeah, something to do.
What movie did y'all show?
Nightmare Before Christmas. It was a while back. Yeah.
Okay.
It was, so it was a good old classic, and I think people, those kids, they kind of just wanted something to do. And we had another one we had planned. Unfortunately, it got canceled, but there was a lot of talk about it because there was some, underclassmen who I think they ended up showing. They didn't realize it was canceled, but a lot of people were interested in it again. So I think it's just if you're able to find the right things that people are interested in, you might be able to get that participation.
So one of the things we are doing next year, is I will say this because y'all are matriculating out, is we're starting gaming clubs. So DuPont starting a gaming club, Chicopee High starting a gaming club, so it's Bellamy. Comp may follow later on, but we feel like that most kids go home on a regular basis and play video games. At one time and point in life, I was a gamer too, but that's been a long, long time ago. Because y'all systems are way far better than what I had. I had an Atari, ColecoVision, different things like that, or Nintendo 64. But you all have these things that are lifelike, and kids play it. If we can find a way as a carrot to get them into school, to get together with kids and play these video games, that's one of the things we're trying to do. So we are trying different things. But I think I go to your point, I think it's a societal thing too. So you look at society as a whole, usually society as a whole, our schools, our other entities are microcosms of what's going on in society. There's a lack of participation in a lot of different things in society also too. And when we speak of society, this is the last topic I will talk about or address, is there was a big social justice movement during the pandemic. And there was a lot of things that people were looking at and seeing that some of the ills in society or things that were going on in different groups of people. And I don't know how did that spill over into the schools? I didn't hear much about it sitting in my office or whatever it may have been. There was some things, we had a protest at Chicopee High during the pandemic one time outside after school. But other than that, how did you all as your peers, when all that was going on, when you finally came back to school, was that still a topic of discussion when you came back? If it was not, what was the topic of discussion or some of the hot topic issues when you came back from remote learning? Because a lot of adults were talking about it, in different circles and different things like that. And when I go to the barbershop, which I think is probably the, cathartic or quote unquote the unlicensed therapy place for of men of color, is the barbershop. We go and talk about everything there. So you're probably like, why does he go to the barbershop? Because my barber uses a real razor, is a straight razor to shave my head. But either way, we talk about a variety of topics. We think we're trying to change the world and talk about all the different things that are going on. But what are some of the topics or hot topic issues that you as young adults are talking about, and you and your peers, especially when we came back from COVID and remote learning? Did any of that permeate into the schools?
When we came back from COVID, I don't think social justice issues were as talked about as they were, but when we were remote, I think it's easier for people to talk about things like through a phone or online, on social media.
Keyboard warrior, you can say anything you want.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So and then when we got in person and we were face to face, people did not speak on the same issues as they would have over the phone. So a lot of what was talked about just wasn't brought up in school. When I got back to school, I was expecting it to be more talked about, but it just wasn't. And what was talked about was obviously COVID. That was a hot and heavy issue. So social justice issues were just not prevalent at all.
Or any issues besides COVID, hot topics?
No.
Anything from your perspective? Hot topic issues, conversations where people were coming back?
I don't remember any mass conversations where everyone was mutually talking about. Really, I think everyone kind of had their own things they were worrying about. I think once again, COVID was kind of just such a prevalent force that it was brought up a lot in certain classes where it was like contemporary problems or something. It was more of a discussion because it was or my criminal justice classes, we talked about that a lot, the social justice issues. But in the cases where the teacher wasn't facilitating that kind of conversation, it wasn't really brought up as much.
What about for you?
Yeah, when I returned back from COVID, I don't really think many people really talked about that, at least from my experience, it wasn't really something that was spoken about much. And if it was spoken about, it was more of just personal experiences, not really anything related to social justice or a broader topics in that matter.
Was there anything else besides COVID that was being talked about?
No, it was mostly just related to COVID.
All right, so this is the last two topics I will bring up. One, 'cause I couldn't bring this up, is, but I want to know, because it's getting that time of year, it's getting kind of hot, is dress code. So, that's probably where one of my biggest interactions came with you,
Yeah.
is when we were talking about dress code, when we actually redid the policy, so there was some concerns and things about it. What is your thought process about the current dress code, or should there even be a dress code?
I don't think there should be a dress code.
Why?
Because I just feel like clothes are like self-expression. I think there should obviously be like a limit to what you can wear. Like there.
Isn't that still kind of like a dress code though,
I
with a
guess
limit?
that is a dress code, but like I just feel like there's just some things you know what is appropriate for school. And
But
what
does
you
everybody
don't.
know what's appropriate?
No, they don't. And
Okay.
that's the issue. Yeah, because I know what to wear to school and I know what not to wear to school. I know what's school clothes and I know what's not school clothes. But I do feel like I think this was more prevalent in like elementary school with like the fingertip things with like the shorts and the skirts. I think that was absolutely ridiculous. Especially as somebody I have super long arms and I have super long legs, so that rule was insane because shorts just weren't that long for me. Like they just did not come as long as my fingertips. That was just not. I couldn't do that. So.
Did you feel like the dress code was slanted or kind of pulled out or highlighted things for females?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, because you'll see a man like at gym in like a white beater. No one say
That would be a tank top for most people that don't know what that is.
Tank top.
Yes.
Tank top. Sorry. Yeah, you'll see them in like their tank tops. Like no one thinks anything about it. But if like a girl wears like a spaghetti strap or anything like that, clearly her cleavage would be out, and it's like made like a way bigger deal. And then like the shoulders thing, I don't really know why shoulders are a big issue. I feel like that's like not an important thing to bring up. Also like the midriffs, I don't understand that. Like excessive midriff, you have like a bra on, that's like obviously you don't wear that to school, but I just feel like if you have like a small crop top, I just don't understand how coming to school in that really
Would you want to see a male in the crop top?
I literally wouldn't care.
Okay.
Like,
I'm just asking the question.
yeah, like it wouldn't affect me not in one way. I'm not wearing it. They're not wearing my clothes. Like, wear what you want to wear.
Your thoughts on the dress code?
Yeah, to me, I think once again, I say there should be a dress code in terms of obviously you shouldn't be able to wear literally whatever you want, but I think it should be more of a bare minimum just to like obviously, you shouldn't be able to walk around in your underwear to school, to that extent. There should be a little bit more than that.
But aren't we close with the piranha jeans? I call them piranha jeans.
What are those?
Because those are the ones that got all the holes in the front.
Oh,
I can
yeah.
see your kneecaps, I can see your ankles, I can see everything. Those are piranha jeans. I call them piranha jeans because it looks like somebody just ate the whole front out of them. So therefore, that's to me, it's almost close. Why are you even wearing the jeans? Because I can see all the front of your legs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in that way, like, I think that's more of just, personal taste.
Yeah.
Because personally,
But also
once
you get
again,
some lotion on too, because you can't be having that. Yeah. That's just me. I'm sorry, I digress. Go ahead.
yeah, but like, with something like that, once again, that's something like, I had a pair of those, I didn't like them anymore. So, I think it's up for something like that. It's up to if you like that and if that's within your personal preference. But I think it's not really up to the school to decide if that should be allowed. Once again, with the shoulders thing, I've always been thrown off by, how that's been a policy. I've never been distracted by anyone's shoulders before, so, I still don't really get that. And I would definitely say, kind of the question you answered, I also agree that, it's definitely something I feel like that ends up targeting women more. Because for me, I've never been dress coded or anything ever because I think the policy is already kind of, generally pretty loose for guys because it just hasn't been as much, targeting towards them. And so I just feel like overall there's not really a need to, drastically enforce, what people can wear. As long as, it's when once again, not walking around in underwear, just to bring that point across.
Your thoughts?
Right, so I do agree that like a dress code is needed, but I feel like it should be very minimalistic in what it entails. Because I feel like, if you allow someone to really dress how they want in a comfortable manner, they're gonna be like more engaged with like school because they're gonna be able to express themselves, they're comfortable. And it doesn't really just make sense to be able to like restrict them like heavily just because of like the clothes they're wearing. It just feels like it's like a restriction on someone's expression, in my opinion.
So let me flip this on its head. So how would you feel about if your teachers were wearing the Pirata jeans, or teachers were coming in wearing the skinny jeans, which I don't know how dudes wear skinny jeans. Maybe that fad is gone. But even I can't even wear the sweatpants that have the thing at the bottom, the cuffs, because it tells me look like pajama pants. So I mean, I'm old school, but I came up in a different generation. How would you feel if your teacher is sitting up there in the front with some skinny jeans or the Pirata jeans cut out, or the tube top or the half shirt? Would you still be able to learn and feel comfortable with it? I'm just asking. I'm not saying that that would be the case. It's just a question because I have no thought process either way. If your teacher's good, your teacher's going to be good and get the message across either way. But I'm saying, do you look at him or her differently if they're dressed in a certain way?
Like honestly, like if that was the case, basically, I feel like I would actually have like a better connection with my teachers, because when they're like walking into the classroom, right, and they have this like formal attire, I kind of feel like they're like different, like they're like better than me, or like authoritative in that manner, basically. But if they're wearing like similar clothing to me, they're basically at the same level, you know, like so I'm able to form like a better connection with them in that manner.
Yeah, to me, I would say I agree with that too. And I think once again, you know, with certain clothing where like, if it's obviously something that I don't like, seeing someone else wear, you know, a friend of mine, I'd probably have the same opinion, you know, if a teacher was wearing it. Not to say that, you know, I'm thinking of them differently, but obviously, you know, if I don't like it, then, you know, I don't like it. But, you know, when a teacher's able to, you know, wear, you know, a pair of sneakers or something, you know, that like, you know, I'm like, hey, you know, those look nice. It's able to, you know, kind of build on making a better connection with the teacher. You know, like one of my you know, my teacher, Miss Hennessy, you know, she always has, you know, a lot of, you know, cool sneakers on, and it just makes it easier to, you know, have a conversation that doesn't always have to be, you know, about school or something, and just building a better connection with the teacher. So in that case, I feel like it's almost better to be a little more loose in that aspect too.
Yeah, I agree. Like them dressing casually, just like is more like relatable. If you have on like a pair of jeans that I like, you know, we can talk about like, oh, where'd you get your jeans from? Like, you know, just something. It'll spark a conversation more, because the clothes that teachers wear now, I wouldn't really be interested in asking where they got that from, or like, because we don't wear the same clothes. So.
See, I don't feel like y'all can talk to me because I'm in a suit and tie. Y'all were talking to me today, so.
No, just like I wouldn't want to ask about your suit and tie. Like
Okay.
I don't wear a suit and tie.
I wear J's. I got a whole collection of Jordans.
And
so.
and if you wear them, I might
Yeah.
ask you
Okay,
about it.
all right. So, the last thing I will ask is, do you have any parting words you all want to say? So we can wrap this up. Anything you didn't touch on that you didn't feel like you needed to say? This is like a free segment. Before I get to that though, I want to make sure I acknowledge Dr. Petrikowski, Vice Principal Jeff Bouye, and Mr. Evan Rodriguez, that are all advisors for this group, for the student advisory group. So I just want to make sure I acknowledge those individuals for the support and for taking their time out in order to be at a lot of events to support these individuals and other individuals on the Student Advisory Council. So I want to thank them all and appreciate what they do on a daily basis for our students and their families. With that being said, is there anything you want to close out with, you know, whatever's on your mind from this perspective? We talk about a variety of subjects. You're about to graduate next week. You're about to go to college. You know, you're about to really take that step into that adulthood world, which is not an easy world, but I sound like all three of y'all are very prepared for what the next step is. I'm impressed in the things you all have done, impressed in the conversation, so this is for you to, you know, say what you want to say to the audience, or say to me, or say a bit of farewell to Chicopee Public Schools, or whatever you want to do.
I don't have anything specific that I wanted to bring up. Yeah, I am very grateful for my last 4 years of high school, all the experiences that I've had, the people that I've met, and I'm very appreciative to have been on your podcast today.
I appreciate you coming.
Yeah. And that's all I got.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, as you know, I've been a fan of the podcast for a while, and you know,
You've been after me. You know,
yeah, despite the little mishap, I'm glad, you know, finally had the opportunity, you know, because, you know, it's just something interesting. Once again, you know, like just being able to build that connection. It's like it's not something that everyone does, you know. It's like, it's just cool. I remember like one time I brought it up, and everyone was like, "Well, you got a podcast," and we listened to a little bit in class, and it's just, it's something like cool that, like, you know, like someone higher up, you know, that it makes them a little more relatable. Just having, you know, something like this, just, you know, to talk to the people. And I do also want to ask, like, you know, because obviously you have more experience than us, so kind of like when you were in our shoes, how did you feel, and like how did you get ready for your next steps?
And I will address that in a second, but I want to give you the opportunity. Anything you want to say?
I don't know, I'm just grateful that you invited us to your podcast. You know, it seems like it's been a fun time, of course, and I feel like my entire experience throughout Chicopee Public Schools has been like really excellent and fun. So I'm just grateful for that.
So yeah, no, I thank you all for coming. I mean, for me, my parents, as I said before, a little bit of background, went to all segregated schools, and my parents stressed education, so it was huge. My dad was a big-time athlete. My mom got pregnant with my brother in high school. She was third in her class, and my dad he couldn't go to do the sports thing, so my parents went the non-traditional route of getting their education. So they really pushed me and my siblings along the way, so it was a priority from that perspective. And I remember, and I said last year in my graduation speech to you all, when I came home from graduation, my graduation gift was a new set of luggage. My parents were trying to tell me it's time to go. You either got to go to the military, get a job, or go to college. I ended up going to college because I had siblings before me that showed me that path. The best way for me, I can say, that prepared me is I set habits along the way. I always had, even when I played, you name the sport, I played it. But when I came home, the kitchen table became study center. I always did my homework. I always did the homework before I went to bed to make sure everything was done. I would get up early sometimes to study for tests. I carried all that away into college. Those habits built upon habits for me to go through, college, undergrad, grad school, and so forth. Even in my job today, I still do this. I mean, a gift and a curse I think I kind of have is OCD. I'm very detailed. So everything in my work, I pick up on words. I won't put anything out for public consumption unless I won't say perseverate on it, but I want to make sure it's pretty much has to be perfect, because you don't know how people are going to judge you, whatever it may be. That may be the way that I've been raised, the things that have happened to me, that people may perceive you by how you write, how you talk, and everything else. That should not be the case, but it is the case in a lot of things, so I'll make sure those things are good. But to me, it's always about setting habits and having good routines. The routines help you out, because in college, you're on your own. So you have to make sure you have a good routine to study, know how you learn. I mean, if you're a morning person, be a morning person and study. You operate better at night, take some evening classes, whatever it may be. Make sure you have room or live with somebody has the same goal for you, the same goal for themselves to graduate, because you have a common goal, because they're not going to disrupt what you're trying to do. You want to move with people that have the same motion, they're trying to go in the same direction. Because there's a saying that says association brings on the simulation. I mean, I got people that are still friends. When I go home, I talk to them. When it's time for me to go do something, I give them dap and I move out, because we're not moving in the same direction. They still are friends, but I know the people I have to keep in my circle to make sure I'm moving in that same direction. So you have to be careful who you associate with. You also have to have good routines, from that perspective. And it's also what your parents instilled in you. For me, it was never to disappoint them. And that became at the point where I don't want to disappoint myself. You're going to have failures in life, and people are going to write you off, but you don't have to write back. Just remember that. You may get written off, but you don't have to write back. You know who you are, you know what you have inside of you, and you got to keep moving forward. And that's the best thing I can give you for that advice. But have good routines, and if something's not working for you, figure it out. I learned early in college, don't take no Friday 8 a.m. classes, because that's the toughest thing in the world you're going to get. But sometimes those freshman classes, you get stuck with those Fridays. But after that, you get to start to build your own schedule. So you're trying to learn, Friday morning's not a good time for me. So you just got to realize what's good for you. And I'm saying the most thing about this thing is enjoy life too. All you talk about different things and hobbies, take a time out, unplug sometimes, have some time for yourself, do what you like to do, recharge, you like to read, listen to music, play sports. Sports was the best thing for me. I got to concentrate, I got to decompress, and I can go back to something after something was bothering me, whether it's work-wise, whether it's, academic-wise, whatever it may be, all those things helped out. So I wish you all well in your future endeavors. You all seem like y'all definitely are going to do great things. You're going to make Chicopee Public Schools Chicopee Public Schools proud. You're going to make Chicopee Comp proud, Chicopee High proud. You're making me proud just having this conversation with you all on the things you're going to do. Keep up the good work, and any way I can help you out in the future, please reach out. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this is how we Chicopee. So thank you.